Fanny stings. Not me, of course. And even if I did, got a very effective ointment for that. It's very good, actually. It's not a sponsored item or anything like that. I'm not plugging it. The ointment, not the fanny. It doesn't matter anyway. Fanny stings, or Annie Dings, of course, are two of the more lovable nicknames that we got for Danny Ings, because we love Danny Ings. Unfortunately, he's just not been a very, very good signing for West Ham, and it looks like he is off ski, back to Southampton. Best thing, I think, probably for the player, for Southampton, certainly for West Ham, although West Ham get the very worst part of the deal. Southampton are probably looking at it thinking they sold a player, a very good player, for £30 million to Aston Villa. Didn't work out there, didn't work out at West Ham. Looks like they may well be able to buy him back for £6 million. And quite frankly, I think we'd be lucky to get that from him. I've got nothing against the player at all. Not only the player, the man himself. I just think it was the wrong transfer, wrong player, wrong time, wrong manager, wrong club, all of that sort of thing. Although he really did try and integrate himself at West Ham. And, you know, I think Ings could have cause for complaint. He was never really given a fair chance. And I would back that up. Do you know what? He was never given a fair chance within a system with a strike partner that really would have suited him. I think it's 37 games, 3 goals. One of them was off his arse, I think, against, it was Nottingham Forest, wasn't it? Do you remember that one? But, you know, good player, fox in the box and all the rest of it. But, you know, look, David Moyes got no business having a fox in the box in his team. It just doesn't work. He can't do it. I mean, why anybody at the club thought it was a good idea to sign Danny Ings is absolutely beyond me. David Moyes approved it with Chicharito, who I guess was the ultimate fox in the box. Just doesn't know what to do with these players. And I think it was Mikel Antonio said it best, which is if you're a striker in David Moyes' system, you're feeding off scraps. It was in reference. He was talking about why Gianluca Scamacca was completely unsuited to the way West Ham played. I can only assume the Danny Ings transfer was one of desperation. And it was, you have to cast your mind back and remember that we were, so obviously not set, not this season, not last the season just gone, season before, excuse me, when we won the Conference League, we were fighting relegation. So I think he was brought in to try and give us some sort of attacking impetus. I'd love to know who signed him. Whoever it was, I think everybody is culpable in this. If it was David Moyes, then absolutely ridiculous. He clearly wasn't going to suit Moyes' system. If it was the club, then absolutely ridiculous. Maybe, you know, whatever, David Sullivan or Rob Newman, still ridiculous. It would have been obvious to any of them that this player didn't suit David Moyes' system. I mean, just go and read any article, watch any video before we signed him, and whoever was talking on the video or whoever was writing the article would have said, hold on a second, is this guy going to suit David Moyes' system? The whole footballing world, I think, knew it, aside from the club. And of course, you've got to say the player himself as well. I mean, I think, if I remember it correctly, I think Emery had come in at Aston Villa, done really, really well. I think he'd put the whole sort of weight of his tactics behind Ollie Watkins, which of course was the right thing to do. And Ings was surplus to requirements. He wanted to move for first team football because he was only getting a substitute role. There was never going to be anything other than that available at West Ham. So I think either Ings himself made a bad decision or his advisors did, because you would think that any one of them would have said, well, don't go there, mate. You're not going to get any more game time there, really. So I think in many respects, almost by almost every metric, it was an abject failure. I guess for Danny Ings' bank balance, it probably wasn't. But I don't know. I don't know. I'm sure he was a relatively wealthy man anyway. I'm sure he would have preferred to have been playing football. So yeah, so he's going to go back to Southampton now, and I think that's a really, really good thing. But I do find it quite interesting. We'll discuss it, a little bit more, in the upcoming days. It's interesting to see the purge, the West Ham purge, because Ings, to get a buyer for him, I think is a good thing, really, particularly with his wages. I don't think we've heard the last of the details. What, £6 million, and Southampton are going to take his wages? Or maybe he'll just take a wage cut. He seems like the type of guy that would, to be fair. The sort of information being leaked out there that we're willing to let Kurt Zuma go, as I discussed yesterday. I think it'd be lucky for him to pass a medical anyway. This is the purge, a Lopetegui purge, if you want. And if we were wondering, myself and Gio did a video a little while ago, which was 3 players who would thrive under Lopetegui and 3 players who would not. And I think, Danny Ings was certainly one of them. He wasn't one of the 3. It was too easy. It was obvious he probably wasn't going to feature. So it's interesting to see who Lopetegui's getting rid of now. And I think, as somebody once said, the easy thing is to sign players. The difficult thing is to sell them, because generally if you're looking to sell them and you want to sell them, then they've probably flopped at one point or another. So there's not going to be a whole queue of clubs lining up to take these players. So I do think it's quite interesting. What is interesting also, myself and Joe are just about to go and discuss this over on Patreon in a minute. We're about to do a Patreon video. Watching the Czech boys play last night for the Czech Republic, I just wonder if there's been any change in Lopetegui's view with those. I think it's been widely assumed for some time, certainly by myself, speaks for myself here, that there was no way Souček was going to fit into his system. I do wonder, but it is interesting because money is tight at the moment at West Ham. There's no doubt about that. But I think money is tight in football. We do have some money to spend, but you can get another player off the wage bill, and then if you can get, even if it's just a little bit of money for him, it all goes towards the pot. I think what is interesting, it's probably not worth doing a video on its own, just on the subject of Maxwell Cornet. But he'd be the next one I'd possibly be looking at after all the guys that I'd mentioned. You would probably think that because of, I guess, the last couple of seasons at West Ham, it ain't going to work out. But I look at it and I think, well, maybe, just maybe, this guy could possibly do well under Lopetegui. He says the words, and every manager says these words, that everybody starts with a clean slate. Everybody comes in for pre-season training and everyone gets a chance. And I think it's a nice sentiment, and I think it's a generalisation. I don't think it's true for everybody. So I think it's, at some point you have to look at your tactics and think this guy's just not going to fit. And I think in terms of Danny Ings, he looks at the tactics, maybe looks at the age profiling. There's no point giving this guy a time to impress in training. He's not going to work out. Let's ship him out. I think that probably the same is true of Kurt Zouma, who I've already mentioned, and clearly a couple of others who we've discussed as well. However, I do look at it in terms of Maxwell Cornet, and I do think he's possibly one of the players who Lopetegui might look at and think, you know what, let's give him pre-season training, play him in a couple of friendlies, and maybe he might have a chance to impress and show Lopetegui that actually can feature, play within his system, and possibly have a future at West Ham. So I think that the jury's still open for Maxwell Cornet there. In terms of Annie Ings, I'm afraid she's gone. But as I say, you've got nothing bad to say about the man or the player himself. Just was never, ever going to work out at West Ham. And I think if it is a £6 million transfer, not even factoring in the wages, it's that whole thing is act in speed and repent at leisure. And I think we're going to repent in the form of wasting another £9 million.